What's up, everyone? I'm going to be going over my arrangement of one of my new tracks coming out called Toxic, which is coming out on July 1st on all platforms. And I just kind of want to go into a little production breakdown of the sounds I used, how I created it, just to help out anyone who might be struggling on figuring out how to make wave, what effects are used, things like that. So I've been doing music production for about a year. These are things I've learned, and a lot of it are pretty basic principles. However, there's a lot of more advanced stuff that I'm still learning that you can find on other videos as well. So use this as a little sort of foundation to understanding how a lot of these wave tracks are made, understanding the elements behind it, whether it be the Reese Bass, the pads, the vocals, the melodies, the leads, all that stuff. So I hope this is helpful for you guys. If you have questions, let me know, but let's get into it. All right, guys, let's go into the Reese Bass. So with wave, we want a nice Reese Bass. It's kind of the fundamental of the track. You need that thick Reese Bass. For this, I use Serum. You can use other VSTs also, but I really just like using Serum. This is a preset I use for this one from Splice. Kind of change a little bit about it, but this is the first thing, and here's the effects. So the biggest thing about your bass is I use a Reese Bass, and what I actually do is I cut out the sub and I add a different sub bass. I use the operator from Ableton and use these settings you can see at the bottom here. And what I'll do is I'll EQ out. I'll leave the sub in, cut out basically up to 100 hertz where my Reese Bass comes in, and then that comes in here, so you can see on the EQ. So that way I have both basses, because I found sometimes with my Reese Bass is the sub can be too wobbly, and I don't want that. We'll go ahead and solo out the Reese Bass and then the sub bass, and then put them together so you can see what it sounds like. Alright guys, so for pads, I like to have some background pads, and in my background pads what I'll do is I'll have different kinds. I'll have a lower frequency pad, a middle frequency pad, a higher pitch pad. So EQ is your best friend with pads. So what I'll do is, if I have a certain higher frequency pad, I'll EQ and cut out some of the mids and lows. If I have a mid, I cut out the highs, or duck down the highs and the lows. If I have a low, I duck down the mids and the highs. This just makes it so frequencies don't clash together. And that's the most important thing about pads, is just to ensure that you're using EQ to fit the pad where you want. Now, I use Serum, Spire, same thing for some pads. I send it through some reverb, just give it some more of that space, and I sidechain with a compressor. So I group all my background pads together. I'll play them for you in a second, and then we'll kind of talk about the lead pads, and then we'll go into some pannings. So you can see right there, each pad sounds different. I've EQ'd certain things to allow it to fit. So when they all play together, it doesn't clash, and it just sounds really full and nice. Now, as for panning, this is something that you can watch a lot of videos on panning, and for me, every track is different. For this track, I really like to have mids and lower ends in the center, which is a good kind of basic rule to have, and my higher end pads maybe panned or a little bit to my left or my right. But the big thing to just keep note is to use your ear. If you have something that's clashing, even with EQing out, sometimes you may just need to pan one a little to the left, pan one a little to the right. Not only are you creating that width and space that wave tracks love to have, but you're fixing it so your frequencies together will sound good. So let's go into the lead pads now. It's the same principles as the background pads, pan with the panning and the EQing. I'm going to solo each one out, and then I'll play it for you together so you guys can hear what that sounds like. So for my high pitch pad, I went ahead and panned it a little bit to the right. My kind of middle end, I panned a little bit to my left, and my lower end, I kept it in the middle. So that way, since this middle pad and the high end kind of have these similar sounds together, I don't want them to clash too much. So I'll do a little panning there to create more width, space, and just so the frequencies don't clash and they sound better. I go ahead and throw on a compressor and sidechain it to my kick, so track will be more punchy, and I do use a little bit of saturation. It's important when using saturation. That's going to make your harmonics louder and kind of just fill the track more. You need to keep in mind if you add too much saturation, a lot of times those certain frequencies can go up super high. They can kind of get you that ear screech pain, and you want to go ahead and use your EQ after and just really find those and tone down anything that's too sharp. All right, let's go into drums. Drums are, I would say, the most important part of your track. You want it to be loud, you want it to sit well. That's the beat, that's the fun of the song. That's what's gonna carry your melodies, carry your leads, bring your track together. With Wave, there's a lot of different things. So for the most part, you know, we want a nice kick, a nice snare, hi-hats, open hats, different snare ghost notes, you know, other percussion sounds. So the very basics that you want, you know, is you want a nice kick. What I do, this is how I EQ my kick. I keep that punch up. So for this, I be sure I EQ that up a bit, kind of duck down the low mids right there, leave it flat. My snare, if you look here, where this punches through, on the big frequency fundamental right there, I'm gonna turn that up a bit. Every snare is different, but the basic you really want to know is wherever you sort of have that punch, you want to EQ that up. That goes for the kick and the snare. The hats will kind of turn down a lot of the, obviously, frequencies we don't need and just leave it there. One big thing with Wave we want to talk about is exhaust. So things like, let's go down to here. So Wave has a lot of these sort of big exhaust sort of sounds. It just gives you more of that atmosphere, that sort of width that Wave has. I go ahead and throw on a glue compressor. You don't know how compressors work, there's a bunch of great videos, but glue compressor you want to use for sure. Put on a little saturation. And then what I also do is I send it to a bus right here. I send it to this bus where there's a little bit of saturation on the sort of like mid highs. And that just helps it kind of come more to life. So having basically gluing your drums together, you want a nice kick. A lot of times you want some, I write basically all my drums. I don't use a lot of fills or loops, but you can. And you just want cool little hi-hat rolls, nice snare, good kick melody. Then the big thing is to ensure you have other percussion elements to kind of fill that space. So here I have a lot of this, where it has that space, that width. Add a little bit of texture sort of drum stuff, exhaust, all of that. So have a lot of drum sounds, play around. You want basics, you know, you want a nice kick, a nice snare, a nice little hat, use a glue compressor, a little bit of saturation if need be. And then as for panning, I like to pan my hi-hat to the left a little bit, and then my open hat just a little bit to the right. Certain cymbal crashes to the right or the left just to create more of that width. You want to keep your kick in the center. Your snare I like to keep in the center. Some people like to pan it a little bit to the right. Just kind of depends, but I'm gonna go ahead and play the drums for you so you guys can kind of hear what everything sounds like. I'll solo out some things and I'll play it all together, and you can see all the little different textures and things that are in it that really make it all come to life. One thing with drums too, where everything kind of really comes to life, have a lot of different fills. Your drum beat can stay relatively the same throughout. Just depends how you want to write your track, but have fills to change it up. Have breaks, you know, have a crash cymbal come in, let the hat and the kick and snare all go quiet for a second, kick it back in. That's where a lot of music production is just figuring out different fills, different ways to move and evolve your track. And just having all these different sounds will kind of put it all together. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the melodies and the leads. So you'll hear in the beginning of the song, I have this little background thing playing. Found on Splice using Serum. This is a little preset for it, but you basically want something that kind of feels wide and fills some space. After this, I have my main lead playing, which is a little saw wave deal, and this is what it sounds like. So you can hear it's really wide, it takes up a lot of space, and that's what we want in wave. We want that sound that's going to give it atmosphere. So it's important when finding and writing a melody that we have that sort of sound that gives it really that space. Same thing, I just EQ frequencies I don't want, frequencies that I want more of. I put a little echo on it on both of these things here. Then as for the group, use a compressor, same thing, side chain it to the kick, use a little bit of saturation just to kind of make it more present. I also sent it over to this little reverb just to give it that more atmospheric thing too. So when writing your melodies, as for writing them, a lot of times Wave uses this sort of similar pattern where you can add like these little like delay sort of notes. What's love about Ableton is you can use the scale function and basically hit scale, select a scale, and it can highlight the notes for you, and you can kind of build melodies like that. Melodies can be one of the hardest parts of a song for some people just to figure out how to build it. This is where you just kind of have to be creative. There's a lot of great videos explaining how to build basic melodies, but for the most part, what I even do sometimes that sounds silly is I'll sing things out that sound good, kind of get an image in my head, try to put it in Ableton of what I think will sound good, and just playing around. When you listen to a lot of Wave, you'll find a lot of similarities, and then you can kind of build your own and expand off that. But long story short, keep it simple, keep it nice, let it sound good, let it cut through, keep it wide, atmospheric, and you got a perfect melody and lead. Now for probably my favorite thing about Wave is the vocals, all right? I use Splice for all of my vocal samples. You can go on Splice, you can basically search female house vocals, female lead vocals, male, whatever you want, like atmospheric vocals, and you can find a lot of cool samples there. This vocals, I'll use some saturation, very basic stuff. EQ, same thing. Have a compressor, you really want that stuff sidechained to your kick. What I like to do is find a vocal sample where I can have sort of like a mid-frequency vocal and then the same thing playing, but it's a high one. So for example, let's play this here.
Why do you do this? Burn at the moment. Couldn't see your behavior was toxic for me. Eternal optimist. I'll make the best of it.
So for me, having those two play at the same time and together creates that just fuller vocal sound. EQ is your best friend with vocals. You want to EQ stuff out, it will send them through to some reverb. For my reverb here, what I'll do is I'll put an EQ on to EQ out some of the low end reverb because I don't like that sound in my tracks. I'll low cut here on the reverb, and the big thing is you want a big decay sound. So if you, let's turn it up a notch for fun. So let's turn it down.
Why do you do this?
See how when I press pause, it just ends. Now let's put it super high.
Why do you do this?
See how it echoes. So you don't want too much. You want to find a good middle. Big thing about vocals, you just want to really, for me, I like to have them sit central. I'll throw on reverb, as I said, super important. You do a little bit of like background fills or little background echoes. So in here, so with vocals, a big thing is just to cut things up, to cut your samples up, to throw it into other stuff. Maybe you want something in the background after it, a little echo, or you want to cut things up a certain way. But for me, that's where like I think the most fun is in music production is the vocals, really cutting that stuff up, getting it to flow well, adding different things. Go ahead and play these for you together so you can listen and you can see the little details of the vocals.
Why do you do this? Right in the moment. Couldn't see your behavior was toxic for me. Eternal I make the best of it. Couldn't see your behavior was toxic for me. It was toxic for me. It was toxic for me. Couldn't see your behavior was toxic for me. It turned a loss to mess. I make the best of it. Couldn't see your behavior. I make the best of it.
Okay guys, one last thing I want to add also is just the master chain. So all my tracks are being sent to the master, and I highly recommend you get OTT. I believe it's free. I can't remember. I got it a while back. It's basically a multi-band compressor. These are the settings I use. I'm gonna be honest. A while back, there's a great artist named Sage. You should check him out. He does a lot of cool funk and wave and some trance, and he just said to put this on, and it sounds great, and it does. Every track I've used, I put this on, it sounds great. Just use these settings, and trust me, you'll like it. 170 upward, 35 downward, 12 death, 100 time. You know, I don't know what the hell this does, if I'm being honest, but it sounds pretty good. Then I have a limiter on. Let's keep it to -1, so we're not clipping anything. U-lean is just a loudness meter measure, but I keep my master pretty simple. The big thing is just in the actual tracks themselves, being sure I'm EQing, using compressors there if I need be, things like that. So the master chain, very simple. OTT, I have a limiter set, and that is all. Made it this far, thank you for watching. I just really hope that this video showed you some things if you're new to Ableton, kind of understanding the arrangement, what instruments are used in wave music. There's a lot to it. This is very basic surface level of understanding, you know, pads, how to pan them, how to EQ them, understanding drums, all of this. I know I talked a couple things in the video, but just wanted to reiterate that. Highly recommend to get Splice, where you can find a lot of really good samples. Also having Serum, you can use that to make basses, pads, and same thing, you can find presets through Splice, so they go really great together. Lastly, I just want to put this, you know, music production can be frustrating. Don't let it beat you down. Every day I'm learning something new, and I'm sure a year from now when I watch this, I'll learn more things that I can expand off of, but these are very basic fundamental things that I think work in wave, that I've learned from other people that I'm trying to share with you guys, because I understand starting off, it can be so intimidating, it can be so confusing, there can be so much. So this helps you guys, and if you guys want something more in particular, like a deep dive into pads, a deep dive into Reese Bass, whatever, let me know. I'd be more than happy to make that. I hope you enjoyed the track, and I hope you found this helpful for you. Let me know in the comments if you guys need anything, and thank you for watching.